Okay, going to try something a little different, a little bit of a deep dive into two films, and I was inspired slash prompted because I was on my Instagram and I saw that the New Beverly Theater in Los Angeles is running for Halloween a double feature of Lucio Fulci's Gates of Hell and House by the Cemetery, and I don't want to say laughed, I was like a little bit surprised because Gates of Hell is a really graphically gory film, ludicrous but graphically gory, kind of a funky Living Dead. I don't want to call it a zombie movie because it's more supernatural, but it's like half a ghost story, half a zombie movie. And then you have House by the Cemetery, which is like sort of a slasher, sort of a really grim homage to the Giallo films, although it's more slashery, creepy monster movie, violent. Both movies will get called Grindhouse classics. I'm going back by memory. City of the Living Dead, when it was released as Gates of Hell in the United States, not to be confused with Gate of Hell, which was the first Japanese film ever made in color, that came out in the U.S. in '83. As City of the Living Dead, it debuted in Italy in 1980, and it was Lucio Fulci's follow-up to Zombie. Zombie was a massive hit. I remember the TV ads, I remember the commercials, I remember the advertisements in the newspaper, and I certainly remember the crazy poster. The first time I saw it was by the Mayfair movie theater, and I remember seeing all over New Jersey, all over Philadelphia, the New York suburbs and the Philly suburbs and the city of Philadelphia. Zombie was everywhere. So the follow-up, they had a lot of high expectations for it, and I only vaguely remember Gates of Hell's TV ads, very vaguely. I think I remember the newspaper ads vaguely. It did not do well and was kind of in and out. House by the Cemetery, that movie, I remember the TV commercials, and they were really cool with the narrator going on about the house by the cemetery, you may have mortgaged your life, and it was just such a cool advertising line. And I remember people, relatives and friends that actually went to go see this film, which was kind of rare because it was no one under 17 admitted. It was unrated, just like Gates of Hell, just like Zombie. But both House by the Cemetery was in and out within a week or 2 weeks. It wasn't like this was a big hit that made millions and millions of dollars. It was your 1 week only type production, and people call them grindhouse films. I don't know if they were even successful at the Grindhouse. I think, like I said, I think they were briefly successful, although they developed a cult following. Gates of Hell did get the cover of Fangoria magazine in '83, and it was a very cool article that I read it, maybe 5 or 6 years later, bought it as a back issue. But they were probably, instead of a Grindhouse or a drive-in movie, I kind of would call them VHS classics, because VHS is definitely where they reached their largest audience, and definitely where they had sustained interest over the years. And I'll get a little bit into the VHS, seeing them on VHS and the original VHS stores when they were mom and pop shops back when they first started. But Lucio Fulci, I had no idea who the hell this guy was. I knew what Zombie was, I knew what House by the Cemetery was, and I knew what Gates of Hell was. But I had no idea who the director, I'd never heard of him until I had picked up John Stanley's Return of the Creature Features movie guide, and boy did he trash Lucio Fulci. He did not like gore films. H.G. Lewis, Fulci, Wes Craven, they got really trashed. And that's not to put John Stanley down. He's entitled to his opinion, and it's a good book. And he was really more into classic films, although sometimes I thought it was unfair. He was really very unfair with the Godzilla movies, I would say. But these films, both films came out when the drive-ins were dying, the second-run theaters were closing, and the grindhouses were headed towards their demise. But everything got a second life on VHS, and that's kind of where, like I said, where the cult started. And when I return, I will talk a little bit about those video store days and then the crazy movies that used to pop up. But it is very intriguing that Gates of Hell would be and City of the Living Dead would be selected for a double feature. Zombie plays every year in LA, well, plays everywhere at Halloween. And many of the people who show up at these revival house theaters, they're film fans. They're not necessarily horror fans, or they're not necessarily a fan of any particular genre. Oh, I shouldn't say that. What I mean is they're not going to a Western because they like Westerns. It's not a crowd that goes to a sci-fi movie because they all like sci-fi movies. They're not going to go to a double feature, not everybody, but a lot of the people who will go to these films, it's the first time they've ever seen them. They like to go to revival screenings. They see something that looks kind of cool. They show up and they'll ask people, have you ever seen this movie before? And you'll see a lot of hands go up and say, no, it's my first time. And Gates of Hell is really going to knock people for a loop. It is a freaky deaky movie, and I'll get into a little bit more of it next time.